Greetings to all, and welcome to the Seattle Law of One podcast. Today's episode is about archetypes of the mind. In the cosmology of the Law of One, the archetypical mind, also known as the Egyptian tarot, can be thought of as the blueprint for third density life in our part of the universe, the software or the programming, as it were, for what we think of as reality. It consists of 22 images representing archetypes of the mind, of the body, and of the spirit. Today, we're going to focus on archetypes of the mind. How can learning about that help us in our spiritual growth and in our daily lives? Let's find out. My name is Jonathan Tong. I'm facilitator for the Seattle Law of One study group. We can be found in the list of study groups at the LNL Research website shown on your screen. We also have a Facebook group, and we meet on Zoom twice a week. Tuesdays from 3 to 5 p.m. Pacific time, Saturdays 8 to 10 a.m. Pacific time. You don't have to live in Seattle or anywhere near Seattle to join our Facebook group or our Zoom sessions. Anyone who's interested and available is welcome to join. Just contact us at seattlelaw1@gmail.com if you'd like to get on our mailing list. We send out emails once a week to let you know what we're talking about that week, as well as the Zoom links. We do also have a YouTube channel where we keep recordings of previous podcast episodes, as well as recordings of Q&A sessions with Jim McCarty, Austin Bridges, Gary Bean, and Tricia Bean from the LNL Research Channeling team. Go to our YouTube channel and hit the subscribe button if you'd like to get notifications when we upload new videos, and contact us at seattlelaw1@gmail.com if you'd like to sit in on any of our Q&A sessions. As mentioned, our episode today is about archetypes of the mind. Let's go ahead and meet our panel. Panelists, go ahead. Just let our viewers know your name and where you're calling from. Starting with Andy.
Hi, I'm Andy. I'm calling from Southwest England in Cornwall, and thank you for having me.
Thank you for being back. Always know it's going to be a fun episode when Andy Burris is on. Neely?
Hi, I'm Neely, and I'm calling from Portland, Oregon, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
We are so happy to have you back. Thank you for being here. And Guillermo?
Hi, I'm Guillermo, straight from Montreal. I have studied somewhat consciousness from a scientific perspective, and I'm glad to be studying it from an archetypical one with you guys today.
We are so happy to have you on, Guillermo. Thank you for being here. Did want to remind our viewers that none of us here are experts on the Law of One or the archetypical mind. We are just normal people like you talking about spiritual things that seem important to us. Anything we say could be wrong. You're welcome to disagree with anything that any of us say. If you are already familiar with the Law of One and the entities known as Ra and Quo, you might want to skip ahead to the chapter on what is the archetypical mind. Otherwise, sorry, did want to let you know. Our panelists, Andy, Neely, and Guillermo, are part of a archetypical mind study group, and they have a YouTube channel shown on your screen. If you're interested in learning more, check out the videos. If you're interested in joining that group, contact me at seattlelaw1@gmail.com, and I can give you the contact information for them. Otherwise, for those who are new to the Law of One, you can think of the Law of One as a set of spiritual teachings based on the understanding that all is one and that one thing is love. Everything that we're reading through came to us through the process of channeling. You can think of channeling as a form of telepathic communication between humans and entities such as angelic beings, extraterrestrial beings, inner planes beings, spirits of deceased, higher self, etc. Basically, a channel serves as a mouthpiece for other entities to speak through. And in this case, those entities would appear to be of extraterrestrial origin. There are two types of channeling that have been done by our friends at LNL Research. Trance channeling is when the channel is in a trance state, meaning they are subconscious or unconscious as if asleep, meaning they are not aware of what words are coming out of their mouth as they are saying them. This is how contact was made with the entity known as Ra back in the early 1980s. Conscious channeling is when the channel is in a conscious but deep meditative state, meaning they're only somewhat aware of what they are saying. This is how contact was made with an entity known as Quo, starting in the mid-1980s all the way up to present day. Who is Quo? You can think of Quo as a group entity made of 3 social memory complexes, Ra at 6th density, Latwii at 5th density, Hatan at 4th density. You can think of a social memory complex as a planetary consciousness, as if the entire human population of Earth was merged into one group mind. You can think of densities or dimensions as different levels of consciousness, different levels of reality, since those two things seem to be very closely interrelated. Imagine, if you will, that the elements of earth, fire, water, and air have some primitive form of consciousness, as many indigenous peoples have been saying they have for centuries. We would call that level of consciousness first density. You can think of second density as the level of consciousness of plants and animals, clearly a quantum leap above and beyond the consciousness of what we would refer to as inanimate matter. You can think of third density as the level of consciousness of humans or cetaceans like whales or dolphins. Again, a significant quantum leap above and beyond the consciousness of plants or other animals. You can think of fourth density as the level of consciousness of social memory complexes. Again, it would be as if the entire human population of Earth was merged into one single consciousness. Obviously, a significant quantum leap above and beyond the consciousness of an individual person. You can think of fifth density as whatever would be a comparable quantum leap above fourth density. You can think of sixth density as whatever would be a comparable quantum leap above fifth density. It is quite a bit more complicated than that. But for now, suffice it to say, the entity known as Quo seems to be a group entity made up of 3 planetary consciousnesses, Ra at 6th density, Latwii at 5th density, Hatan at 4th density. First contact was made by the L&L research channeling team in 1986, almost 2 years after the end of the Ra contact in 1984. They have been channeled every month since then and up to the present day by the L&L research channeling team. Transcripts of those sessions can be found at the L&L Research Conscious Channeling Library shown on your screen. Having said that, let's take a little bit of a look at what is the archetypical mind. We did do an entire episode on the archetypical mind back in episode 6, so if you want to learn more in depth about it, I would encourage you to check out that episode. Otherwise, for now, if you could imagine that your mind is like an iceberg, and the tip of the iceberg above water is your conscious mind, whatever of the iceberg is just below the level of water, could think of that as your subconscious mind, and whatever is deeper below that would be your unconscious mind. Similarly, it would appear that if you dig deeper enough below your conscious, subconscious mind, you would get to what's called the racial mind, the mind of your race, be it an ethnic or racial group on this planet or perhaps from another planet. And if you dig deeper below the subconscious, unconscious below that, you would reach the level of the planetary mind, the level of consciousness of Mother Gaia, our entire planet Earth. Below that would be the archetypical mind, which is either the mind of a solar system or a galaxy. It would seem that Ra and Quo are referring to a galaxy when they refer to the archetypical mind, but it seems hard to believe there aren't other levels of consciousness between a planet and a galaxy, which is made up of billions and billions of stars. Suffice to say, it's big. And if you keep going deeper than that, then eventually, supposedly, you would reach the universal cosmic mind, the mind of the entire creator, the mind of the creation. Panelists, did I miss anything on that? Anything you want to add to anything I've said so far? Sounds good. So as mentioned, the archetypical mind consists of 22 images representing 7 archetypes of the mind, 7 archetypes of the body, 7 archetypes of the spirit. Today, we're going to focus on archetypes of the mind, those 7, plus the 22nd archetype, which is a special case called the choice, which we'll discuss more before too long. Let's go ahead and start by taking a look at Matrix of the Mind, or the Magician, Arcanum number 1. In session 91 of the Raw Contact, question 33, all of these are from the Raw Contact, unless stated otherwise. Ra said, the matrix of the mind is the unfed conscious mind, the mind without any resource but consciousness. Do not confuse the unfed conscious mind with that mass of complexities which you as students experience, as you have so many times dipped already into the processes of potentiation, catalyst, experience, and transformation. In session 79, question 20, Ra described the matrix of the mind as that from which all comes. It is unmoving, yet it is the activator in potentiation of all mind activity. In session 91, question 19, Ra referred to the sphere as indicating the spiritual nature of the object of the will of the one wishing to do magical acts within the manifestation of your density. And in session 91, question 21, Ra referred to the square, whenever seen, as the symbol of the third density illusion and may be seen either as unmagical or in the proper configuration as having been manifested within, that is, the material world, given life. Whole lot to look at for starters. Let's go straight to the panel. Andy, any thoughts, reflections on anything on the screen?
Yeah, I love it. I love the unfed conscious mind, and this idea that there's this like void, and then it's just like nothing, and then ideas emerge from it, and everything that we know emerge from that, whether our creativity or anything in nature has emerged from this void and this sphere. It's like this idea then comes to fruition in the square. It becomes solid, and it all came from the one original thought, I guess.
Or so we are told. Yeah, fascinating. I mean, we could easily spend another 2 hours just talking about that much. Neely, anything to add? Any thoughts, reflections?
Yeah, essentially, when looking at, excuse me, archetypes of the mind, it's to me, it's a way to understand myself better. So, starting with the matrix, I think Don did a really nice analogy about the matrix of the mind. He said that the matrix of the mind is kind of like an infant. It's an infant that was just born, doesn't have any experience in this incarnation, and then there's a tension. It wants that experience. It reaches to that experience. And you can see it by the image of the matrix of the mind standing. The magician is standing and he's not moving. He's not doing anything. He just yearns. He reaches for that experience. So I really like that as kind of like the beginning of everything.
Yeah, I appreciate your highlighting all those points. I think it is definitely worth reminding that we're referring to the unfed conscious mind, which, as you said, is kind of like the mind of an infant, not the mind that already has all of the experiences and memories and presuppositions and prejudices that we've already gathered from our life experience. But it is a male entity which appears to be doing the reaching to acquire more knowledge, to understand more, which I think we're going to get into before long. Guillermo, any thoughts, reflections on anything here?
I really like the contrast in between the circle and the square, and also like depicted in the text, sort of like the square is the illusion, but it's also the manifestation created by the magician. So in the proper configuration, it's not a cell, it's not like a confinement, it's a domain of exploration that can be harnessed through the focusing of the will and through the initiation into the magician, into the magical actions of the one that holds the circle, like which is sort of like the consciousness that we all share. And I think it's nice that we can see the square like as a prison, but also as um, um, just like a square of exploration, like a sandbox, like when you're a kid and you can just play around. There are certain rules, but if you learn the rules, you can have fun. We can all have fun.
That's a great way to think about it, in a sandbox. Definitely never occurred to me. It is really fascinating how much magic is spoken about in the Law of One and in channeling sessions. There's so much of it that really seems to refer more to, I don't know, astrology, metaphysics, psychology, whatever, and science comes up quite a fair bit too. And yet magic is kind of thrown in there just along with everything else as if it's part of who we are, which Apparently it is. And yes, we're going to see spheres quite a bit more in the rest of these archetypes. And we're going to see quite a few more references to magic as well. I think I did want to take a closer look at that square and that bird in the square. Did anyone else have any thoughts, reflections on anything on this slide before I change the slide?
Yeah, just one last thing. Even though this card does not talk about polarity, we will get into polarity later. You can notice that he's holding the magical sphere in his right hand.
Yes, yes, which will be more significant before too long, I think. Let's take a look at that box. In session 91, question 24, in referring to the bird in the box, cage, square, whatever, Ra said, all birds are indeed intended to suggest flight and messages and movement, and in some cases protection. The folded wing in this image is intended to suggest that just as the matrix figure, the magician, cannot act without reaching its winged spirit, so neither can the spirit fly, lest it be released into conscious manifestation and fructify thereby. I could not help but notice that the bird in the box, to me, looks like an ibis with the shape of its bill, which I think would be fair to say very much resembles Thoth, an Egyptian god who is often depicted with the head of an ibis, a sacred animal associated with him. Thoth was an important god in Egyptian mythology, known as the god of writing, wisdom, and magic, which seems to correlate with what we're seeing here. So what do you think? Any thoughts, reflections on this part, Neely?
Yeah, I'm looking at the box, and the box is really the walls of the box are really, really thick. And it looks like the ibis is kind of trapped in that box. And if we're talking about the box as the third density experience, it's almost like our spirit at the beginning, because the veil is so thick, cannot really see, cannot really fly, cannot really we cannot really see our true nature, our inner spiritual nature within that. And it feels to me that this is the reason for the experience here in third density, is to discover that and somewhat penetrate the veil and somewhat even choose between polarities, because we're seeing in the box for the first time that there is dark and white, the checkered lower wall of the box, and that kind of depicts to me polarity. So there's a lot of work to be done here, and we're going to talk about it when we get to the choice between those two polarities.
For sure, and we will see polarity reflected many more times in many more archetypes. I think for our viewers who are new to archetypical mind, it is worth noting that, yeah, the word illusion is used a lot to indicate that what we think of as reality is in fact a illusion, and that reality is in fact a lot bigger than what we think and a lot more magical than what we think. So that's certainly the impression I get when I see the bird in the box, which the bird represents magic and the box represents the mundane third density illusion, shall we say. So in order for the magician to be able to do magical acts, has to find a way to release the bird from that box, is how I'm seeing it at least. Guillermo, any thoughts, reflections on anything here?
Well, I really like what Neely said about the consciousness, the spirit, and the bird. It really seems like usually we tend to think of at least I do, of the magician as being like pretty wise, but it seems to suggest that it's more like a child's consciousness that is just born, like we all just discussed, right? And that gives the magician, its magical aspect is that childlike innocence. And in order to do anything, then it requires wisdom. And wisdom comes from the spirit depicted as the bird. And the child has to play with the bird in order to do something in the sandbox. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, interesting way to look at it. I think this would probably be a good time to remind our viewers that Rod did say specifically that the archetypical mind, all of these images are designed specifically so that every individual looking at them sees them a different way. and that there's really no one necessarily correct way to interpret anything here. They're really meant for each person to look within themselves and try to find the meanings that are meaningful for them. And yet, I think everything Guillermo said makes perfect sense to me, for sure. Andy, anything to add?
Yeah, I love what you said, that everyone brings their own, interpretation, because for me, these archetypes and these cards are very much a tool for self-discovery. They're like a ladder that you climb up to get to the top. And if we sit around and discuss ladderness and how ladders are made and all that and never climb them, it's completely useless. But if we use them to discover ourselves, then there's so much treasure to be found. And I love what you're all saying. And also, for me, the magician is the magician because it represents something out of nothing. And how magical is that? And there's magic everywhere, us sitting on chairs without falling through them because we're all just atoms and the chairs are atoms. That's magic. Drinking water, communication, and even the most mundane things are magic. And for me, at this point, the box represents material reality and all that's material down to the single atom and the subatomic, and the bird represents the spirit that permeates all reality and all atoms, all 3D-ness.
Yeah, beautifully said. And it's so easy to fall asleep in the illusion of third density and forget that reality is magical, indeed, and that as big as the universe is outside of us, there is a equally vast universe within us as well, where all this stuff comes from. Beautiful thoughts. Like I said, we could spend 2 hours just talking about Matrix of the Mind, but we have 6 more archetypes to go through. Anybody else have any thoughts on this one before we look at another archetype of the mind? Sounds good. Well, let's take a look at Potentiator of the Mind, also known as the High Priestess, or Arcanum number 2. In session 78, question 34, Ra said, "The unconscious is indeed what may be poetically described as High Priestess, for it is the potentiator of the mind, and as potentiator for the mind is that principle which potentiates all experience." In session 79, question 20, Ra referred to the potentiator of the mind as that great resource which may be seen as the sea into which the consciousness dips ever deeper and more thoroughly in order to create, ideate, and become more self-conscious. In session 92, question 30, in referring to the Ankh symbol, or the crux ansata, the cross with a handle that's the high priestess has in front of her belly, says, has to do with the continuation of the consciousness which is being potentiated in incarnation beyond incarnation. Session 93, question 24, Ra referred to the circle indicating the magic of the spirit, the cross indicating that nature of manifestation which may be only valued by the losing. Thus the crux ansata is intended to be seen as an image of the eternal in and through manifestation and beyond manifestation, through the sacrifice and transformation of that which is manifest. And in session 92, question 22, Ra said, the priestess sits within a structure in which polarity, symbolized, as you correctly noted, by the light and dark pillars, is an integral and necessary part. The unfed mind has no polarity, just as intelligent infinity has none. The nature of the sub logos, which offers the third density experience, is one of polarity, not by choice, but by careful design. Super fascinating. And as we said, we will see many more references to polarity in future archetypes because it would appear to be something that is hardwired into our third density reality as it is this idea of polarity, of light and dark, of the positive path and the negative path, the service to self path, service to others path. Guillermo, did you have any thoughts, reflections on anything here?
Well, I have too many to count.
I'll bet.
The quickly, like what first come to mind is she seems to be sitting on something, right?
It would
Like a
appear that way.
square, something as if she's because we just discussed about thought, and in the Egyptian mythology, there's the Ra, the sun god, and then there is Nut, the goddess, which is like the cosmos that envelops, the male counterpart. In this side, it seems as if she's sitting on top our illusion. She's over superimposing, like vastly. She's absorbing everything that the magician or us might potentially manifest. She supersedes everything. Everything happens within her, and the
Hmm.
process of creation happens through magic and through sacrifice. Like the cross, it goes a line in this direction, and then it intersects another line here. It's a change of path. Is like they say, the only way to value something is by losing something else, and then you go on another way.
It is fascinating when looked at through the lens of Christianity and how central the cross is to that wanderer known as Jesus, who used that cross as an instrument of sacrifice to act as a way shower, is what Quo said, to help third density populations early in their spiritual maturity, show them the way to fourth density and unconditional love. But it was a huge sacrifice for sure. Andy, any thoughts on anything here?
Yeah, I love this card because I love the idea of the resource being represented by a female who holds all knowledge, and it's kind of like not quite the provider, but one who knows how to help one provide for oneself. Does that make sense? So it's like I'm gonna go a little bit into my cake analogy. It's like the Matrix is where the idea of, say, a cake comes from, and the idea, and then the potentiator is like when we go to the shop and and the shopkeeper's just waiting there. The potentiator is waiting, you know, for the customer, and then I go to the shop and it's like, well, here's the recipe, here's how you cook the cake, here's the book, here are the ingredients, and what sort of cake do you want to make, a service to self or a service to others cake. And then and that cycle continues. Not sure if I'm
Yeah.
making sense.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. I think that's a great analogy, and analogies are often helpful ways to connect something we really don't understand to something that we do understand. It is worth noting that the matrix and the matrix of the mind, I believe in Latin, means womb. It's derived from mother, as in matriarchal and so on, meaning it is like where everything comes from. And the potentiator, to potentiate, means to increase the power of, to make more effective, which I think goes very well with your analogy. If the matrix is the person who wants to make the cake, that's the source of the cake, then the store where they get the ingredients from is the thing that potentiates that and makes it possible. Great way to look at it, I think. Neely, anything to add?
Yeah, wow, I want to talk about so many things that you guys spoke about, and so first, Guillermo, if we're talking about the image of the high priestess sitting on that big box of reality, We can see that she's sitting between the two pillars, of which one of them represents the service to others and one of them represents the service to self path. She also has like a thin veil on her face, which is somewhat transparent. And if we go back to that image that Jonathan shared at the beginning of showing the big iceberg that has a little bit of the conscious up, and then there's a lot of subconscious or unconscious below the surface. And she's the one that's underneath the surface. But when she connects with the matrix, then the veil is half transparent. So the matrix is almost trying to understand or to get into an experience, and then it turns to that high priestess, to the potentiator. The potentiator serves memories and intuition and a lot of those things that are underneath the surface, and by that it enables the matrix to have that experience.
Well said.
Yeah, which is
Yeah,
another
I think somewhere Ra or Quo said, yes, the semi-transparent veil over the woman's face is indeed a reflection of the veil of forgetting, which we are all trying to pierce, that which separates the subconscious from the unconscious mind.
Yeah, there's just one more thing I wanted to talk about. When looking at the image of the card, we can see that the high priestess has kind of a robe that's draped on her right shoulder. And to me, the robe has two meanings. One of them is protection. So her right side is protected, and that kind of hints to the fact that the right-hand path or the service to others path is protected. But also a robe is hiding something or keeping something under wraps. And when I was contemplating the card, I was thinking about how the STO way, a lot of service to others is done not on the surface and not for everybody to see, but it's done in kind of in the back end.
Yeah, well said. And I believe we're going to take a look on the next slide, some passages that explore a little bit further what that veil is concealing, what the robe is concealing, indeed. It is worth noting that, yes, the matrix of the mind represents the conscious mind, identified with male energy, shall we say, and the potentiator of the mind represents the unconscious mind, represented by a female entity. So I think it would be fair to say that the archetypes of the mind could be thought of as the ways your conscious and unconscious minds process catalyst and experiences, and how one is transformed in the process of doing that. How you process all of this stuff that comes into your senses every moment. That's kind of what all of this is about, what's happening on the conscious as well as subconscious levels. Did anyone have anything to add before we take a look at some other passages related to this same archetype? Cool. This is from Quo on April 11th, 2009. Quo said, "The male energy is that which reaches. The feminine energy is that which awaits the reaching. The male energy is that which seeks to know. The feminine energy is that which by direct insight and intuition already knows. It is as if the male principle hungers and thirsts for the direct awareness of the one infinite creator. Yet with all his heart, with all of his energy and strength, with every priestly attribute, the male principle is denied the book of life. The feminine principle, on the other hand, dwells in a state of rest, aware in a direct way of the energies of infinity and eternity. The moon sings through the blood of the woman. The cycle of the seasons echo in her, and to the biological feminine is given intimate awareness of the ocean of life as she conceives and carries new life within her. The male principle, for all of his energy and dominant strength, can only come next to this ocean of life, sit upon the shore, and wonder at the mystery which femininity encompasses. The basis of those cultural prejudices of which the one known as Jim have spoken lies in the inability of men, biological men, and archetypical masculine principle to reach his goal, which is to know. Such a beautiful, powerful passage that really shines a light on the dynamics that we see as men in power in our society struggle to control and dominate females and their reproductive cycles, shall we say. I really like the references to ocean, and I think I forgot to mention before that. Yeah, I mean, they liken the potentiator to a sea, a deep, deep, deep sea, deep ocean, and the unconscious mind is like that tip of the iceberg. The subconscious mind is at the surface of the ocean and is wanting to dive deeper into that ocean of the unconscious mind to explore its resources. That's what I think so much of this is about here. Andy, any thoughts on anything here?
Just the awaiting, the kind of waitingness of the potentiator really moves me, and that there is that pattern there, in terms of courtship as well. You know, the woman is always often represented in literature around the world as the flower that's waiting to be plucked, and you know, and it's reminds us, well, me anyway, to often, when catalyst happens, to just wait and see. There's a kind of allowiness. Sorry, my vocabulary is terrible. But yeah, allowiness about it.
I think I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah. Again, we will see so many of this idea of the interactions between male and female, the male principle reaching, the female principle awaiting the reaching. It is part of the yin and yang, you could say, of the third density reality as we know it. Neely, anything to add?
Yeah, with regards to the waitingness that Andy just said, there's something really interesting in talking about the reproductive cycle. The reproductive cycle is done under the surface, inside the female's body. And even though it cannot be initiated without having the male kind of stands on the side as the woman nurtures the baby and brings it to term. So there is that inability to really reach and feel the experience firsthand. And both the male and the female have to wait until this act of creation bears fruit. So that's a really interesting kind of like a power dynamics between the feminine and the masculine energies.
Yeah, and I love the way they refer to as the Book of Life, which apparently is held in the lap of the high priestess. It's covered by the veil. And that women, because they are so innately connected to Earth and the moon cycles and menstrual cycles and childbirth and everything, yeah, they have direct experience and access to that book that the male, as they said, can only sit on the shore of the ocean and look and wonder at what's out there. Which again, it would explain so many of the dynamics that we see between men and positions of, say, political power who seem so intent on controlling and dominating that energy. Guillermo, anything to add? Any thoughts, reflections?
Well, I'm making my peace with being denied the Book of Life.
Nice.
No, but to be honest, I think there's some poetic component to sitting on the shore of a vast ocean and wandering but never truly knowing. It's sort of beautiful. It's like to know or not to know. Do you really want to know everything, or do you want some things that are just outside of their grasps that keeps you wandering forever? Maybe it's a gift. I'm starting to like it.
That's nice. Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think it worth noting at this point that we're really talking about male and female energies, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a biological male or biological female. We're talking about everyone has male and female energies within them. But again, this is about that interplay between those energies, however that might look. I think I had another passage I wanted to look at to probe a little deeper into this. Anyone have anything they wanted to add before I change the screen? This is a continuation from that same session. And Kuo said, think of the figure in the Tarot image of the Potentiator of the mind, shielding the book of life within her veil. And we believe that you have the essence of why this prejudice exists. The truth is, it is to the female principle that spiritual knowledge is given, not as one who tells, but as one who carries. It is not that the biological female is more knowledgeable of spiritual things than the male. It is that the very essence of femininity, the archetypical nature, contains knowledge in a direct sense of the truth for which the male grasps endlessly, but which he can never completely uncover. For it resides in the mystery with which women are comfortable and men are not. The easiest and most direct way towards reversing this situation, which is unconsciously felt by men, is to dominate the women who contain the key to the mystery of life. It is not a logical movement. It is not a rational decision. It is based on fear, as the one known as Jim has said, and I believe this is Jim McCarty. Yet it is not a fear of any one woman. It is that fear that they shall never be granted the truth, but shall always be dependent upon women who contain that truth. Yeah, beautifully said. I'm not sure if they're really saying anything here that we haven't already spoken about, but I think kind of fleshes that idea out more. And again, we will see much more in Archetypes of the Mind to come as far as this interplay between male and masculine and feminine principles. Anybody have anything to say on this passage before we take a look at another archetype?
Yeah, maybe just to add that this power dynamic between the feminine energy and the masculine energy is present throughout written history. So we can see that in the witch hunting, we can see that in religions that marginalized women to the side. We can see that in political systems that are happening here in the US and in other places in the world, how this attempt that may or may not be conscious of controlling that is not, that you cannot control, really.
Well said. Yeah, it is worth noting that Kuo has said more than a few times that, yes, as you mentioned, the history of humanity on Earth shows heavy imbalance towards aggressive, bellicose male energies as reflected in the endless wars that we seem to be caught up in. And they have said that a really important help for our spiritual growth and evolution would be balancing more of those female energies with the male. So important that we had a podcast episode on that called Divine Feminism. It was episode 8. It is the least viewed episode that we have of all our podcast episodes, and yet it is, in my opinion, one of the most important episodes that we've done. Great passages, great teachings, great panel. If you have not seen it yet, viewer watching this, I would encourage you to check it out. Otherwise, let's take a look at a passage or two on Catalyst of the Mind, also known as the Empress, or Arcanum number 3. In session 7836 of the Raw Contact, Ra says this represents the unconscious or female portion of the mind complex being first used or ennobled by the male or conscious portion of the mind. In session 93, question 11, they said, all that assaults your senses is catalyst. All that is unprocessed that has come before the notice of a mind-body-spirit complex is catalyst. And in session 93, question 8, they said, you may find polarity expressed firstly by the many opportunities offered in the material illusion, which is imaged by the not white and not dark square upon which the entity of the image is seated. Secondly, upon the position of that seated entity. It does not meet opportunity straight on, but glances off to one side or another. In the image, you will note a suggestion that the offering of the illusion will often seem to suggest the opportunities lying upon the left-hand path, or as you might refer to it more simply, the service to self path. Worth noting that, yes, there are other images where we see the entity there appearing to look to one side or the other. indicating that third density is designed so that we tend to notice things of a negative nature, things of a service to self path, more perhaps than the positive path or service to others, which I would certainly say makes sense in the world as I'm experiencing it these days. I certainly am seeing a lot more of what appears to be negative stuff than what appears to be positive. Neely, any thoughts on anything here?
Yes. As you said, the world is skewed towards negative experiences, and we can see that in the media, we can see that all around. I think it goes back to the second density body that we inhabit, and which is more about survival, and thus kind of like our evolution as a mind, body, spirit goes towards maybe taming that part, or maybe learning to see catalyst not necessarily as something scary or negative, but learning to view catalyst in a more positive light, or in the light of, okay, what is it coming to teach me? So yeah.
Yeah, it's worth noting, aside from high school chemistry classes, I don't think I've ever seen the word catalyst used nearly as much as in the Law of One. It's used a lot, and I think it's defined nicely here in that second paragraph where they say, all that assaults your senses is catalyst. You are constantly bombarded by sense information all the time, and it has to pass through your unconscious and your subconscious first before your conscious mind like processes it and makes sense of it in whatever we interpret that we are sensing. Something I think I like in that first part at the top of the page where they said the catalyst of the mind represents the unconscious or female portion of the mind complex being first used or ennobled by the male or conscious portion of the mind. It seems to me this is representing all that sense information that's coming in that we're processing, and the catalyst of the mind is how the conscious mind is processing all the stuff that's being filtered through the unconscious mind. That's my take on it, at least. Guillermo, any thoughts on that or anything else here on this screen?
Well, I like to maybe elaborate on the preponderance of the service to self path in this card, because she's looking to the left. It really seems to suggest that. I would like just to add that every negative catalyst or positive catalyst is really meant to be used in whichever way you want. Like a really powerful negative catalyst. Like really bad stuff happening on the planet it's a great opportunity to be of service and to help others and to open and extend your arms and to evolve with other human beings. So I think it's just a curious peculiarity of this part of the archetypical mind that a higher noticing is given to the left hand path in terms of catalyst. But in all cases, it's encompassed by it's integrated by the conscious mind. It's like the consciousness is flowing through the sea of the unconscious minds, and then they dance together, and there's an interaction, and they dance, and there's like a courtship, and then their interactions is like the feminine gives catalyst, and the masculine ennobles it by making it her gift part of himself. It's yeah, integration.
Beautifully said. I love the imagery of the dance and everything else. And I would agree. I think it would be fair to say that that is the whole reason why our archetypical mind, our third density experience is set up the way as it is. It's designed to appear negative to see if we can, in spite of all of those appearances, still polarize towards positive, polarize towards thinking about others first, when, as they're saying here, you're getting a lot of signals that you should really think of yourself first. There's a lot of great opportunities to be had here if you just say, fuck everybody else and just look out for yourself. I think that's part of the test and challenge we've been given. Andy, any thoughts on anything here?
Yeah, so many. And I would say, in terms of catalysts, there's probably actually, like loads of positive catalysts, and we just don't notice it because we take it for granted, like throughout the day. Let's say we're awake 16 hours a day. We don't notice that we've got air to breathe, food to eat, we've got transport, or we've got bodies that function. All that is catalyst, but it's not like, oh, let's meditate on this. It's only when things happen that we don't want to happen that we think, oh, I've got to deal with this catalyst. Oh, I can't handle it. What do I do? And I think there's still a kind of idea that processing catalyst means denying it or pretending we're not affected by it, which, as according to Ra and Kuo, can cause cancer. And also when we're interacting with people and they're kind of like talking about the catalyst, there's a lot of bypassing that goes on where we're told, or we tell others, well, you just need that's catalyst, be grateful for it, and then not provide the service and the love and the attention to actually help someone process the catalyst, but rather blaming them for wanting to process it through talking or anything like that. And it's like, well, actually, what does it mean to process catalyst?
Is that a rhetorical question?
It's not rhetorical. Like, what does it mean? I'm asking anyone,
It's a great question. I think that's kind of what the whole archetypes of the mind is about. How, in fact, we do process that catalyst. And I think it's different for each person. Any thoughts on that, Neely, Guillermo?
Yeah, actually, it's really interesting what you said, Andy, about spiritual bypassing. There's a lot of bypassing that's happening. There's a lot of saying, oh, it's so horrible right now with what's happening in the world, but all is well. And then you completely avoid dealing with a catalyst. To me, dealing with catalyst is allowing yourself to feel that negative emotion that rises from that catalyst, sitting with it, letting it flood your body, because there is emotion is in the body, letting it flood your body, thinking about why you're feeling that way, telling yourself it's okay to feel like crap. It's okay to feel bad. Bad feelings in our society, bad feelings are often brushed aside. When you meet somebody in the street and they ask you how you're doing, you're supposed to say, oh, I'm fine. They don't want to hear that you have a headache, you didn't sleep last night, and your kid is nagging you all day long about whatever, right? They want to hear everything's fine. So I definitely think we need to respect all the catalysts that we perceive as negative, because what I perceive as negative is not what you perceive as negative, right? You perceive it as negative, you sit with a feeling, you try to balance it by contemplating, meditating, whatever tool, talking about it, whatever tool you have at your disposal to do that. So I think Andy touched on a very important point.
Yeah, and I know I've seen more than a few passages where they said pretty much that trying to control your feelings or prevent yourself from feeling negative feelings is really just asking to experience them more later. It's really good to acknowledge all of those things. And I'm getting the sense that there's somebody watching this video right now thinking that there's all sorts of good things happening all the time. We just don't notice it, like you said, or like Andy said, because we're fixated on the shit that we see on TV or media that seems to focus on all the negative things. But I'm sure all of us can think of beautiful things that we've seen in our own experiences. People having their own spiritual awakenings, people learning how to be more loving and kind and empathetic towards others. And I think that's part of the challenge, is learning to see those things too. Guillermo, did you have anything to add on? Any thoughts on anything?
How do we process catalyst? I'd say you eat it like a cake and you make it your own.
Yeah, well said. Nice callback to the cake analogy. Well done. I think I had another set of passages to look at on this archetype. Anybody have anything to add before I change the screen? Got a few here. On session 93, question 8, I believe Ra was referring to what seems to be this ring of light behind the seated image. We're describing that as the abiding sun, which from the spirit shines in protection over all catalyst available from the beginning of complexity to the discerning mind-body-spirit complex. In session 93, question 10, Ross said, the nature of the winged creature is echoed both by the female holding it and the symbol of the female upon which the figure's feet rest. That is, the nature of catalyst is overwhelmingly of an unconsciousness coming from that which is not of the mind and which has no connection with the intellect. All uses of catalyst by the mind are those consciously applied to catalyst. Without conscious intent, the use of catalyst is never processed through mentation, ideation, and imagination. The mind-body-spirit complex is, having made contact with its potentiated self, now beginning its flight towards that great logos, which is that which is sought by the adept or advanced student. Session 93, question 20, Ra said, all that you perceive is perceived as catalyst unconsciously. By the, shall we say, time that the mind begins its appreciation of catalyst, that catalyst has already been filtered through the veil, and in some cases, much is veiled in the most apparently clear perception. Session 93, question 18, Ra says, the sphere of spiritual power is an indication indeed that each opportunity is pregnant with the most extravagant magical possibilities for the far-seeing adept. So much cool stuff in here to unpack. Guillermo, any thoughts to start with on this one?
Well, it brings me back to the male aspect of the archetypical mind sitting on the border of the shores of the ocean, which is the unconscious female counterpart of the archetypical mind. And then it realized it doesn't know, and there is no way to know. And once it accepts it, that it will never really know, like in itself, it's not his role. Then the dance begins, right? And the image that I got is like a sailing boat. So he builds a boat and there is a sail. But he has to listen to the current. He has to navigate the currents of the wind, the currents of the sea, which are governed by the unconscious archetypical mind, and they are experienced by the sailor as catalyst. And if he processes them consciously and with will and intent, then he can get somewhere. If it's purely unconscious and your sail is just going to the right and to the left, and there's not really a clear direction going on, then there's no dance, there's no adepthood. It's just reacting and instinct, and the game has not yet begun.
Yeah, what a great metaphor. Great sailboat metaphor. Never thought of that. Much appreciate it. Andy, anything to add?
Yeah, again, so much, but I'm just going to say two things. The abiding sun, I just want to bring in the significator of the spirit, which is the sun. And I think when we've gone through all the archetypes, and all the great ways when we've worked through them at the heart level, and surrendered, to the point like where there isn't even an agent to do the surrendering, and you're completely merged with the logos, then that will guide us through the catalyst, and it will show all catalysts as just opportunities to become even more purified in our service, and I think at that point we can then use all catalysts, not just the negative ones, but like any catalyst to become more and more refined. And it's wonderful. It's, you know, like imagine like every breath you take, you process as catalyst, and by that processing become even more aligned. You know, how efficient is that? Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful way to put it. And I think that kind of calls back to what Guillermo was saying, I think not too long ago, about how you can think of negative catalyst as a negative thing, or you could think of it as opportunities for doing positive things, which I think
Yeah.
is a great way to look at it. And I think that's what I'm reminded of when I look at the sun in this image, and what Ross said about the abiding sun shining in protection over all catalyst available from the beginning of complexity to someone who is discerning enough to see it. That is another subtle teaching, I think. Neely, anything to add?
Oh my God, so much. So first, I so enjoyed, Andy, what you just described about spirit and about the use of any and all catalyst to appreciate the magic and the sanctity of this life that we were given in the third density, in the material reality. That's just so beautiful to be able to reach that height of processing. So I love that. Guillermo, your metaphor of the sailing boat and all the wind and all the catalysts that are being thrown at the boat, you definitely need to take on that catalyst and look at it and see, make a decision. What do you want to do with the catalyst? So that was also very poignant to think about this metaphor, about our lives as this metaphor. And the last thing I want to touch upon is how the nature of catalyst, or how catalyst is mostly processed unconsciously. And
Right.
that's really interesting because it can explain all of those gut feelings that we have, all of those intuitions that we have, even before something actually happened. You met a person, you immediately like him or dislike him or whatnot. So everything is processed within here, and then the potentiator brings it up to our consciousness, and then we need to make a choice. How do you deal with that catalyst? So that was great. Thank you.
Yeah, beautifully said. And I think cannot overemphasize the importance of that. And I like how they addressed it in the second passage from the bottom, that by the time you even recognize catalysts in your conscious mind, it's already been filtered through the veil. And in some cases, much is veiled even in the most apparently clear perception. No matter how well you think you are perceiving, or accurately you think you're perceiving something, it's probably not, because it's been already filtered and distorted so much through your own thinking processes. Andy, was there something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly bring in the cake analogy as well. So, like, we've had the idea of the cake, which is the matrix, and then we've had the potentiator, which is the ingredients and the recipe. And at this point, you know, like it's the cake being agitated, the ingredients being agitated and mixed, and then put in the really hot, uncomfortable oven. And that's like the catalyst, you know, without the catalyst, the ingredients can't become cake.
This analogy just keeps getting better and better. That was great. Thank you. If we could make it pizza, I think I would like it even more. Yeah. Anybody have any other thoughts on this one before we take a look at another archetype? Let's take a look at experience of the mind, also known as the Emperor, or Arcanum number 4. In session 7837, Ra said, "This implies nobility, and in this case, we may see the suggestion that it is only through the catalyst which has been processed by the potentiated consciousness that experience may ensue. Thusly is the conscious mind ennobled by the use of the vast resources of the unconscious mind." And in session 94, question 20, Ross said, "The figure is expressing the nature of experience by having its attention caught by what may be termed the left-hand catalyst. Meanwhile, the power, the magic is available upon the right-hand path, represented by that sphere. The nature of experience is such that the attention shall be constantly given varieties of experience. Those that are presumed to be negative or interpreted as negative may seem in abundance. It is a great challenge to take catalyst and devise the magical positive experience. Beautiful passage here. Any thoughts on this one, Andy?
Okay, I'll have to go back to the cake and it would be basically the tensions, the experience of catalyst is, what kind of binds us or puts pressure on us or stretches us and challenges us, and it's that constant tension which is experienced in the mind. And it was really interesting because when we were in our study group, we did the meditation on this, and then Guillermo, you missed the meditation, but then you came on after the meditation, and then everything you said about the card was basically a description of the meditation. And yeah, I don't know if that was a shameless plug or not, but
I don't know. Guillermo,
yeah.
did you have any thoughts on that?
I had done magic mushrooms the day before, and I was thinking about the cards, so maybe that was that. But I did not hear the meditation before. But I remember seeing the mirror in the pre-meditation.
Nice. Anything else to add on anything you see on the screen, any of these passages? Guillermo? Or I'll pass it on to Neely. I can come back to you, Guillermo. Neely, any thoughts, reflections on anything here?
Yeah, again, this is the third card where the magic is held in the right-hand side. So there's definitely a bias there with what Ra tells us about the negative and the positive paths. So this is something to pay attention to. One more thing is, I think we're going to go into it a little bit later, but I want to talk about those that are presumed to be negative or interpreted as negative may seem in abundance. So apart from the world bombarding us with negative, what is perceived as negative experiences and catalysts, there is much to be said about the way that we perceive them. So for every person, they will perceive an experience or a catalyst in the way that they are designed, or the way that their energy centers are set up. So there could be one person walking down the street and they're seeing a dog approaching them. And the person that has had trauma with a dog will respond in fear. But a person who has only had positive experiences with a dog will see a friend coming over and let's pet him and find their owner. So it's really, in one way, it's about the experiences that we have had, but in another way, if we are putting some conscious spin on catalyst, we can also change catalyst or change the meaning of catalyst consciously. So something that might be perceived as a negative event, we can work at it and give it a positive spin and learn from it.
Yeah, well said. And it reminds me that Ra and Kuo have both said many, many times they have defined magic as the ability to change consciousness at will, which is certainly not the definition I think most people outside of the law of one would think of. But yeah, that certainly is, I think, what you just described and what they're talking about in that last paragraph where they say, yeah, that which is interpreted as negative may seem in abundance. It is a great challenge to take catalyst and devise the magical positive experience out of that. I think is a beautiful thing to bear in mind as we think about all the negative things that we seem to be seeing around us, to be able to make something positive out of that, to change your mindset about it. That is magical inherently. Andy, any thoughts?
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly mention, like, the figure, the emperor is holding the sphere in like quite a precarious way, And then there's the skirt, and Ra mentioned about what the skirt means, and Don was like, does that mean, like there's greater distance? But when I look at it and I kind of try and embody it, it feels like me trying to juggle something delicate like my spirituality that's like, precipitously hanging by a thin thread whilst being pulled by worldly things, and all these things in my life, they're the same. Pay attention to this. You need to do the bills, you need to do the taxes, you need to do all the chores, and and for me that is a really good analogy of how my mind works, in that there's always this kind of battle between like wanting to pursue the spiritual exploration but also needing to tend to these 3D things.
Well said indeed. Well said. Guillermo, anything to add to that? Or anything else?
Yeah, I like that we're paying attention a lot to the sphere and the skirt and the positive and the negative and the positioning. Uh, what caught more my attention again, and I think for the first time, is that the conscious mind is ennobled, and we just saw previously that the unconscious mind is also ennobled, by this interaction of the processing of the catalyst and the dance between the feminine and the masculine. So they're both ennobled, and that made me think, what is an ocean with no one to explore it, or what is a sailor with nowhere to go? They both get something. It's like the whole is larger than the sum of the parts. It just becomes something way, way, way more beautiful than just all what they are separately versus what they are together. And yeah, the sphere, uh, the focusing of the will into manifesting, your direction in life or in this incarnation or through the incarnation, and the processing of many catalysts simultaneously that can either help or distract. It's it, I would say something like tango. The dance between sometimes, of the conscious has the unconscious. So it has this note of aggression and this note of, like suspense, and then there's twists and turns, and then it becomes loose again. I think that's what's happening. That's why there seems to be so much negative catalyst, but it's negative to us, but maybe for them it's just like a sudden move or like a sudden interaction, and then they go again. Something like that.
That's a great dance metaphor there. Again, much appreciated. And it's creating a beautiful visual in my mind right now. I do find it interesting how they use the term nobility or ennobling to indicate what I think you were describing, Guillermo, as how the conscious mind as the magician and the unconscious mind as the high priestess are both ennobled by the interaction of the conscious mind dipping into the oceans of the unconscious mind and processing catalyst through there. They both become ennobled in the process. So yeah, I think we have seen two male figures and two female figures so far, the emperor here being a male figure. And yes, I believe we've seen that sphere held by three fingers, interestingly enough, in the right hand 3 different times, indicating how important it is. I think I had another passage to look at on the experience of the mind. Anybody have anything to say on this slide before I change it? In session 94, question 26, Ra said, "The cross formed by the living limbs of the image signifies that which is the nature of mind-body-spirit complexes and manifestation within your illusion. There is no experience which is not purchased by effort of some kind, no act of service to self or others which does not bear a price to the entity manifesting commensurate with its purity. All things in manifestation may be seen in one way or another to be offering themselves in order that transformations may take place upon the level appropriate to the action." Regarding the cat sitting inside the box that the emperor seems to be sitting on, session 95, question 23, Ross said, "The great cat guards in direct proportion to the purity of the manifestations of intention and the purity of inner work done along this path." And in session 95, question 24, Ross said, "The seeker which has purely chosen the service to others path shall certainly not have a variant apparent incarnational experience. There is no outward shelter in your illusion from the gusts, flurries, and blizzards of quick and cruel catalyst. However, to the pure, all that is encountered speaks of the love and light of the one infinite creator. The cruelest blow is seen with an ambience of challenges offered and opportunities to come. Thusly, the great pitch of light is held high above such an one, so that all interpretation may be seen to be protected by light." So beautiful, and it seems to call back to many things that we talked about already. Neely, any thoughts, reflections on anything here?
So yeah, I wanted to touch on two things that kind of stood out for me. The first one is there is no experience which is not purchased by effort of some kind, no act of service to self or others which does not bear a price to the entity manifesting commensurate with its purity. So this speaks to me about the work that we are called to do here in incarnation. We're not here to coast. We're not here to sit in the boat and let it go wherever it wants to go. There is work that needs to be done, whether we decide to go the negative polarity path or the positive polarity path, it still requires an effort, and that means steering our own ship. So I really like that. There is a price that needs to be paid for whatever it is that you decide to do, but make the decision, do it. And the second thing is mentioning the purity. This is something that I never paid attention to, talking about the purity of manifestations, purity of intention. And that again speaks about you need to choose. You need to choose. And once you chose, stay pure or stay true to whatever it is you chose and follow that route. And then all catalysts can be read really easily as catalyst of love and of guidance, rather than, oh, this is a negative catalyst, this is a positive catalyst.
Well said. Yeah, as we've indicated before, there are many recurring themes, images in the archetypes, and the cross is one of them. We saw the cross and the crux ansata and the figure that the high priestess held in her lap. We see more than a few entities in these 22 images with their legs crossed, and apparently the crossed legs means the same thing as the crux ansata, that there is no experience which is not purchased by effort of some kind, no act of service to self or others which does not bear a price to the entity manifesting commensurate with its purity. Again, a great reminder of the sacrifice that the entity known as Jesus or Yehoshua made on the cross, with a result commensurate with the purity of intent that went into that. Guillermo, any thoughts, reflections on anything here?
Yeah, the I really think it's interesting, like when you manifest something, it's an offering in itself, right? For transformation, because it's not gonna stay the same. Anything that you do, that you imagine, that you manifest, that you create, that you are, that you feel, it's bound to change one way or another at some point or another. So it's there is a choice to be made, but whether you make it or not, you don't really have you have the choice, but things are going to keep changing even if you don't make it. So it's a paradox. I feel that like it's somewhat of a paradox, the experience of the mind. It's a choice, but not really, but it is. But you gotta like sort of act like it is. It's more the intent of making the choice. I think that it's something that needs to happen within you for you to make a choice. But then whether you make it or not is going to change. So, but I think it says, I don't know if you guys have anything to comment on this trend of thought. but I think it's
That all
interesting.
makes perfect sense to me. I think that's what Ra was saying in the last part of this first passage, that all things in manifestation may be seen in one way or another to be offering themselves in order that transformations may take place upon the level appropriate to the action. I would interpret that as meaning what I thought you were saying, which is that just the act of incarnating here at all, it's a huge sacrifice. We all came from a place much different from this reality that experiencing, and wanderers chose to come to third density from sixth density or fifth density and take a risk of forgetting everything that they came here to do. So I think just by physically being here, that's a huge act of sacrifice, and knowing that you did that for that reason and being conscious of everything that you do in this incarnation after that, I think is even more enables you to transform to the degree that you are pure in your intentions, I think. Any thoughts on that or anything else? Andy, Neely?
When Ra says the great cat guards in direct proportion to the purity of the manifestations of intention, and the purity of inner work done, what is the cat guarding then?
Good question.
Is the cat guarding the purity? Is it guarding the manifestation? Is it guarding the intention or something else? And when they
I
say pure,
interpret it as guarding the seeker. It's like a protector for the seeker. That's how I was interpreting it. Any thoughts on that, Neely or Guillermo? It's a great question, of course.
Yeah,
Uh,
to me it also says that the cat is actually guarding the seeker, and the amount of guarding that it does is in direct proportion to the purity of intent or the inner work that is being done.
Yeah.
so it acts like a filter, right? You have like lots of catalysts coming your way, whether you want it or not. But if you're pure enough with your intent and you make the choice and you're going somewhere, then the cat might intervene from time to time, just to filter out some of the catalyst and to make some more go your way. Probably. I don't know.
I hadn't thought of it that way, but yeah, certainly could. I think I am reminded that in ancient Egypt and in many other cultures, cats have been seen to be protectors. That's why they were there in temples. They were acting as protectors for entities there. So that's how I was seeing this one too. I think the Sphinx is basically a big giant cat protector in front of the pyramids, I think. Anybody else have any other thoughts on this screen before I change screens? There's a lot to look at here.
yeah, I just looked it up, and it was a response to the question that goes basically it's guarding along the right-hand path once it's chosen from the effects of the material illusion that are of a negative polarity.
Yeah. So what do you make out of that?
So guarding against the effects of the illusion that are, so I guess and yet Ra also says that we won't have a variant experience.
Right.
So I guess it for me then that would mean that it's guarding the heart from being hardened by the blows that life deals us.
Maybe. I think it is important to highlight that passage that you mentioned, that those who have chosen the service to sell others' path doesn't mean they're not going to experience difficulties. They're not going to experience hardships. They are going to do that. But I think they're saying the cruelest blow is seen with an ambience of challenges offered and opportunities to come. Thusly, the great pitch of light is held high above such an one, so that all interpretation can be seen as protected by the light. If you are pure enough in your polarization, then the worst thing that happens to you could still be seen as a blessing in that way. And I don't know if the cat is helping with that, or I don't know. To me, I was picturing the cat as like unseen protectors working without our knowing it to protect us, maybe from a car accident or stepping out in front of the road and getting hit by a car, or I don't know, could be a lot of different things. Anyone else have any thoughts on this? Again, there's no one correct way to interpret any of these things. I think it's for each person to figure out for themselves what seems meaningful to them.
Can I ask another question, please? Okay,
Yeah,
what does
of course.
purity mean? Does that mean sincerity? Like what do you guys think when you think of the word purity? Innocence, sincerity? I don't know.
To me, it means not to have any ambiguity within you with regards to your intention.
Yeah, I'd say the same. It has to, for me, it has to do with your will, the focusing of the will. But then if I can also, what do they mean by variant? Variant apparent incarnational experience? What do they mean variant? Like it varies?
I think it means different. They're saying the seeker who has purely chosen the service to others path are not going to have like a different incarnational experience where they never experience bad things. There's no outward shelter from the gusts, flurries, and blizzards of quick and cruel catalysts. They're saying you're not going to have a great, unusually happy experience because you've chosen that path. You're going to experience a lot of what could be interpreted as negative things. But if you're polarized purely enough, you'll see them as blessings, as good things. That's my take on it. Anybody different ideas, perspectives?
I like it.
I think with a question about purity, in my mind, I was picturing that little dial that we use as a visual on this podcast sometimes, with STO on the far end of one and STS on the far end of the other. So to me, purity just means how far you have polarized in the direction of service to others. Are you really thinking of others 51% of the time and yourself 49%? Or are you actually thinking of others like 95% of the time and yourself 5% of the time? To me, that would be more purity and polarization. Just my thought. And I'm still struggling just to make 51. Just like everybody else here. On good days, I think I'm up to 55%. Shall we go ahead and take a look at another passage, another archetype? Let's take a look at Significator of the mind. In session 79, question 42. Significator of the mind is also known as the Hierophant, Arcanum number 5. And Ra here said, the Hierophant is the original archetype of mind, which has been made complex through the subtle movements of the conscious and unconscious. The complexity of mind were involved. The complexities of mind were evolved rather than the simple melding of experience from potentiator to matrix. The mind itself became an actor possessed of free will and more especially will. As the significator of the mind, the Hierophant has the will to know, but what shall it do with its knowledge, and for what reasons does it seek? The potentials of the complex significator are manifold. And in session 92, question 15, Ross said, the significator of the mind is both actor and acted upon. Question 18 of that session said the significator of the mind is the harvest of biases from all previous incarnational experiences. And in session 97, question 11, Don said in his question, the entity looks to the left, indicating that the mind has the tendency to notice more easily the negative catalyst or negative essence of its environment. And Ra did infirm that that was an accurate interpretation. Again, we see the entities looking to the left, seeming to the mind's tendency to notice more easily the negative catalyst than the positive. It's just so funny that that seems to be actually wired into the reality as we know it, and that you're not imagining that everything seems to be negative. It really does seem to be negative. It's intended to be that way, to see if you can still polarize positively in spite of all that. I just find that fascinating and hilarious. Guillermo, did you have any thoughts on anything here?
Well, it's a curious thing that he falls upon a male character, right? Because he seems to incorporate both aspects. You know, he's both acted and actor and acted upon. He's like a complex and subtle integration of the conscious and the unconscious. He has the ability to seek for knowledge now. It's like the conscious mind that was just wandering on the edge of the ocean of the unconsciousness, like realizing it cannot know, decided to integrate the catalyst and to experience his journey through the sea. And now it's somewhat like evolved and now has the potential to know. And now it's wondering, okay, now that I have the potential to know, what am I going to know? I just think it's curious that it's depicted still as a male, maybe because the journey began with the masculine energy being ennobled by the feminine energy and vice versa. But I
I
think
think so. That makes sense to me. It would be a continuation of the conscious mind, the magician, the male figure at the beginning. It is worth noting when I looked up the definitions for these words, definition I found for significator was one which signifies or foreshadows, and the definition of a hierophant is a priest who interprets sacred mysteries or esoteric principles. So I think that goes along with what I heard Guillermo saying. The significator is kind of taking everything that's been processed up to this point through the conscious and unconscious mind. Did you have any thoughts on this, Andy, or anything else?
Yeah, like so I'm gonna go back to the cake again. So now the cake's baked and it's for me the significator or the pizza, whatever food you want. It's it's baked and it's how it's presented and it's how the mind decides the the entity is going to be presented to the world. But that's not static. So for instance, someone seeks to the will to know, and what are they going to do with this knowledge? Some people seek knowledge because they want to be validated and they want to show people that they know a lot, and sit on a throne. We were having a conversation about this earlier. And some people seek knowledge and they want to keep it to themselves, and there's different reasons, but that decision affects how we communicate and present ourselves to others, and how we present ourselves garners a response, which in turn will affect how we then present ourselves. It's a kind of never-ending cycle. It's both actor and acted upon, and that process is constantly happening, even when like the mind never stops. Yeah. So for me, it's like the stage on which we present ourselves. And another thing I want to really love about this is that on his left, you've got the lighter figure at his knee, and on the right, he's got the darker figure. And I love that because to me, that's like a reference to shadow work, until we can love the parts of ourselves that we deem to be ugly and hateful and whatever, we cannot claim to be whole, I think.
Well said. Well said. And I believe on the next screen, I've got a passage where I was answering a question about those dark and light figures, more or less the way that you just spoke about. Neely, anything wanted to add?
Yes, it was so beautiful the way Andy described the significator and I find the significator as the most interesting of the seven, because that's exactly it. It evolves and becomes as it is activated and acts. So if we're looking at there is no time and everything is happening all at once, then this is the most evolving archetype of them all, because just as Andy described it, you react in a sense, in some way to a catalyst or to whatever, and then the response that's taken back is, and you react from your own biases, but the response that you get back is immediately changing your biases in ever so slight ways, but it does. And then you become someone that's a little bit different, a little bit evolved. And it's a really interesting, very mysterious archetype in my mind. How is this happening? How is this work being done? And how is it being done that at the same time you're an actor and acted upon? And that kind of alludes to me as the time-space portion of the equation rather than the space-time, that everything happens in a linear way.
How is that? Would you mind explaining that? I don't think I had ever thought of that.
So in a sense, this archetype is both actor and acted upon all at the same time, right? So you react in a way to a catalyst that's based on your own biases, pre-incarnational experiences, in-incarnation experiences that made you the, let's say, the entity that you are right now in the body. And you react to it accordingly, but then the way that this experience, that you perceive the experience, also changed you at the very same time as you react to it. So you kind of like are not sure what happened, what was, the chicken or the egg, or if you go back to time space, everything actually happened in the same time. And you
I see.
were reacting and being influenced at the same time.
Fascinating. I think that is true, and I believe we're seeing references to that in the Great Way of the Mind when we get to it, I believe. But yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I had not thought of that. It's always why I always love these podcasts. Panelists always think of things that I hadn't thought of, see things I hadn't seen. It does remind me, it is interesting in the second one from the bottom that Ra referred to the significator as the harvest of biases from all previous incarnational experiences. I think that's the first reference I've seen to any part of this actually building on what we acquired from previous experiences. I was trying to find a passage where they said the same thing about the potentiator of the mind, because I thought it was said somewhere that the potentiator of the mind also includes experiences from previous incarnations. Do you, Guillermo or Neely, remember seeing that anywhere? Because I could not find that passage when I looked for it.
About the significator?
Potentiator. Potentiator having information from previous incarnational experiences?
I don't recall a specific passage, but it does make sense because the potentiator actually has access to all of the unconscious, and the unconscious is where you have your memories from previous incarnations. So it does make sense.
If you are watching this on YouTube, if you can find the passage, go ahead, post it in the comment section. Would mucho appreciate it. Guillermo, was there something you were going to add?
Oh yeah, the Hierophant, if you look at it from the time-space perspective, as Neil is pointing out, it's kind of like your higher self, I feel, at least in my opinion. It feels like an upgraded version of us that we will always becoming more and more. But if it's in the time-space, then it coexists at the same instant as our present version, right? So
Yeah.
I think there is an interaction, between our future versions and our present versions, and there's the self and higher self relationship that may develop.
Fascinating. Yeah. Well, that would make sense. That would explain the funny hat that he's got there for sure. He's definitely a higher rank than I am. Definitely higher. I think I had other couple passages on the significator to look at. Anybody have anything they wanted to add on this screen before I change it? In session 97, question 16, Ross said, the nature of polarity is interesting in that those experiences offered to the significator as positive frequently become recorded as productive of biases which may be seen to be negative, whereas the fruit of those experiences apparently negative is frequently found to be helpful in the development of the service to others bias. And on October 3rd, 1992, Quo said, the significator of the mind is then the result of the matrix entity or archetypical figure reaching or intending that which can only be potentiated by the seemingly passive potentiator, that seated figure which has within the bosom great wisdom. I believe the first passage there was Ra's response to a question from Dawn asking why the dark entity was on the right side of the significator and the light white entity was on the left, which is a reverse of the usual colors used for polarity. And yeah, I find Ra's response here fascinating. It does seem to be true from my experience that experiences that we would take as positive tend to bias ones more towards service to self, and experiences that we would perceive as negative actually result in more polarization towards service to others. Because when you're happy and you got everything you need and you're having a great time, you're probably not really thinking about others that much. You're probably just thinking about how much you're enjoying the pizza or the sitting on the beach or whatever. And yeah, negative experiences also, I think, tend to perhaps make us more inclined to think of others and how we can help each other. That's my thought on it. That's my interpretation of that verse, that passage. Any thoughts on this, Andy? Anything here?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a other way to interpret what Ra is saying as well, and it's the experience being offered in terms of also what the mind seeks. So, you know, when I worked in the bank, I encountered a minority, but some very wealthy people who, because they've had everything, realize the meaninglessness of it and then gone on to do, you know, a lot of kind of philanthropy and gone into, you know, a spiritual quest because they stop seeking the kind of lovely, pretty white figure on the left and have decided that they want to put their attention towards the kind of darker hardships. And also, so for me, it's a matter of chasing, you know, if we're always chasing what looks pretty and what feels good and all that, and that is not just in the material realm, it's also in the form of like not acknowledging the negative feelings that come out within us. So for instance, you know, we might do something for someone. I know there's a lot of people who are like the primary carers, and there's a part of them that feels resentful, but they want to pretend that life is okay. And there's a saying, you know, too long a sacrifice makes a stone of the heart. And when one doesn't face those negative feelings, we can become so hardened because we're trying to preserve this pretty image of ourselves. That's all.
Makes sense. Yeah. No, appreciate it. And again, it's a reminder that no matter what or who it is you're talking about, there's always many different ways to look at it and interpret it. And I appreciate you sharing that. Neely, did you have any thoughts, reflections on anything Andy shared or anything else from these passages?
Yeah, I really liked what Andy shared about the negative and positive sides of the equation, and a few things came to my mind as well. With regards to what is considered a positive experience and it having darker sides or shadow sides is the accumulation of wealth. You are powerful, wealthy, and strong, but then you become addicted to power and to wealth, and you want more and more and more of that experience. So that kind of pushes you to the negative side, even though it's wonderful to have money or power. And then on the other side, I was thinking of Carla, and I was thinking of Carla's tendency to become a martyr and to give and give and give at the expense of herself. And this was something that needed to be balanced. And she had a lot of lessons throughout her life, specifically close to the end of her life after she had her back operation. And she was forced to accept help from others, which she was very, very uncomfortable with. So that's kind of like seeing the negative, but it has a positive kind of meaning or way.
For sure, I would say that's a great example of what Quo was describing, that first paragraph, where Carla's extreme health difficulties could easily be interpreted as negative experiences, but it ended up very much helping her polarize more towards the positive by giving her more time to do spiritual work because she wasn't able to do the physical work so well. Guillermo, anything to add?
It's a very beautiful card, especially in the light of the positive and negative catalyst and experience like intermix that we're discussing. And it brings to mind the last sentence that that seated figure, like, and the figure is like the integration of the conscious and the matrix and the potentiator, conscious unconscious. It has within the bosom, which I googled because I didn't knew, is the chest in great wisdom, and we see in front of his chest his right hand, right? And on his left hand is like a sword, but down, sort of. I think, at least I think, like for protection. And we're talking about the about everything, and it brings to my mind the more evolved aspect of us that has learned through mastery, how to deal with negative and positive influence, when to say yes, when to say no, when to put boundaries, how to navigate, the whole sea of catalyst ahead of us. And Ra really accentuated throughout the channelings, the complementary but difference between love and wisdom, and how like an overabounding amount of love might result in a sort of like lesser wisdom, and that higher wisdom sometimes require for you to depolarize a little bit in order to persist. And we had many examples, with Jesus and other characters.
Nice. Yeah, I hadn't really thought of that in terms of the balance of love and wisdom, but yeah, that makes perfect sense and reminds me what Quo said at the very end, referring to the potentiator, that seated figure which has within the bosom great wisdom, perhaps represented by the book of life, which she is concealing behind her veil. Beautiful thoughts on this. Anybody have anything else wanted to share before we take a look at the last archetype of the mind? Or no, not the last, second to last. Sounds good. This is in many ways one of the most interesting ones. Let's take a look at transformation of the mind, also known as the levers or two paths, Arcanum number 6. Session 79, question 40. Ra said, "You may see the student of the mysteries being transformed by the need to choose betwixt the light and dark in mind." In session 100, question 6, Ra said, "The concept of the pull towards mental polarity may well be examined in the light of what the student has already accreted concerning the nature of the conscious, exemplified by the male, and the unconscious, exemplified by the female. Indeed, both the prostituted and the virginal of deep mind invite and await the reaching. In this image of transformation of mind, then, each of the females points the way it would go, but is not able to move, nor are the two female entities striving to do so. They are at rest. The conscious entity holds both and will turn itself one way or the other, or potentially backwards or forwards, rocking first one way then the other, and not achieving the transformation. In order for the transformation of the mind to occur, one principle governing the use of the deep mind must be abandoned." We will certainly dig a little bit deeper into what they mean by the prostituted entity, female entity, and the virginal one, the maiden, on the left hand and right hand side of the male figure in the middle. For now, suffice it to say that in order for one to be transformed, one does have to make a choice between one of those two things and to pursue it. Any thoughts on this couple passages, Neely?
Yeah, just from looking at the card and contemplating it, I'm seeing that figure. What's really interesting to me is that the woman on the right-hand side is seen as pulling on the image's left hand, and the image on the left-hand side seems to be pulling on his right hand. So there's kind of a crossing, in a sense, of the negative and the positive polarity, and I'm not entirely sure what it means, but I am seeing that what I'm feeling is that every transformation needs to take both of those paths into consideration, and whatever you become by contemplating both of those paths, and then you make the decision and you go that way or another. So that was interesting to me. And the other thing, when we're looking at that figure, its arms are crossed in a way that kind of reminded me of the way that the Egyptians used to bury or mummify people. They're lying with their hands crossed. I think I've seen it in other traditions, other religions, where they lay people to rest with their hands crossed. And that speaks transformation to me, because to become that new transformed person, something needs to die. You need to let go of something, and then there's a rebirth.
Nice. Yeah, well said. I did not include it in this podcast, but I do remember there was some passage where Ra did talk about, if not the meaning of the crossed arms, referred to the shape of the triangle that appears a couple times in this image. Both the arms crossed as well as the two paths that you see at the bottom kind of represent triangles. And they said triangles do have a specific meaning. It might be transformation, but I'm blanking on it. Anyone remember, Andy, Guillermo, do you remember any special meaning to triangles in the archetypical mind?
I remember them mentioning it and Rob pointing it out, but I don't think they came back to it.
Again, viewer watching this on YouTube, if you can find that passage, feel free to post it in the comment section. Much appreciated. Otherwise, Guillermo, did you have any other thoughts on this couple passages?
Well, there are two very intriguing ladies. There
sure.
is a choice to be made, right? You need to choose a dancing partner in order to get better, at the dance. And yeah, there's no way forward except by letting go of one or the other. And I've tried it. Have you ever tried to untangle your arms uh, without letting go? Let's say if someone holds you in one hand and someone holds you in the other hand. Have you tried to untangle your arms without letting go of any of the ends? There is a way, but the only way is to turn backwards. So you face the other direction. So if you don't let go, the only way is back where you came from, not where you want to go.
Interesting way to look at it, and it does make sense, and there may well be some meaning in there that we never really got to hear from. Wow, but appreciate you sharing that. Andy, did you have anything to add on this passage, these couple passages?
Just quickly trying to look up triangles on the LL research site, and I can't see anything about Ra saying about the triangle. But yeah, I've not found anything in the search. But like for me, the triangle is on one level represents the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, or any triplicates like mind, body, spirit. And that crossed arms, hand shoulder to shoulder, in Rosicrucian tradition, it's the symbol of supplication. And for me,
Supplication or suffocation?
supplication, so like surrender. And for me, the transformation cards is like in each in their own way. For transformation of the mind, body, and spirit represents a kind of surrendering. So with the transformation and body, it's the death card, and it's a kind of surrender, but it's not one that like we get to choose, right? We're all gonna die. And then the transformation of the spirit card is like, the sarcophagi rising. Do you remember that image? you know,
Yeah.
which is like that resurrection. And that's a kind of like a surrender as well, only because you don't have a choice. If you're going to be resurrected, you're going to be resurrected. And, you know, and it's the final stage before the great way, which isn't the end path, I think. It's like kind of like Ra says it speaks to like the whole journey. And then, yeah, so for me, you know, transformation means like surrender at that level. And then in terms of like Don did ask, you know, about this arm thing where like if the female on the left pulls, then the figure will go to the right, and if the female on the right pulls, then in turn to the left. So I don't know if you've got that in the next slide, but for me, prostitution means it's not just, you know, sex work. It's when we give up our integrity and we kind of sell our souls to something that isn't, that goes against our authenticity. So we see that, for instance, in a lot of politicians. You know, they go in with good intentions and then they start to prostitute themselves. Or people who, you know, like in the corporate world, and they go in and they think, right, they graduate, they have good intentions, and then they're asked to do something that doesn't feel right. And it's like, well, but then I've got to support my family, and they justify it. And there's this kind of deceit that's happening. Like for me, that is prostitution. And
Yeah, well said. Appreciate it. And yeah, we are going to look at that more in the next slide, I think.
okay.
I think I looked up prostituted just to be curious to see what other definitions there were other than sex workers. And yeah, a definition I found of prostituted was put to an unworthy or corrupt use or purpose for the sake of personal or financial gain, which I think is very much what you just described. Let's take a look at a couple other passages. We'll talk about that genie in the upper left-hand corner too. In session 99, question 8, Ra said, many use the trunk and roots of mind as if that portion of mind were a badly used prostituted entity. Then this entity gains from this great storehouse that which is rough, prostituted, and without great value. Those who turn to the deep mind, seeing it in the guise of the maiden, go forth to court it. The courtship has nothing of plunder in its semblance, and may be protracted, yet the treasure gained by such careful courtship is great. The right hand and left hand transformations of the mind may be seen to differ by the attitude of the conscious mind towards its own resources, as well as the resources of other selves. On October 15th, 1989, Quo said, to seek the presence of the Infinite One, this is a great aid, and we suggest that we do this most gently, most lovingly, opening to the subconscious as a suitor with bouquet and candy, knowing the spirit to be sweet and precious, the nature of love. Such a beautiful image there. And on session 99, question 8, Ra said, we now speak of that genie or elemental or mythic figure culturally determined, which sends the arrow to the left-hand transformation. This arrow is not the arrow which kills, but rather that which in its own way protects. Those who choose separation, that being the quality most indicative of the left-hand path, are protected from other selves by a strength and sharpness equivalent to the degree of transformation which the mind has experienced in the negative sense. Those on the right-hand path have no such protection against other selves, for upon that path the doughty seeker shall find many mirrors for reflection in each other self it encounters. So beautiful and so much to look here, but yeah, I think it's worth taking a closer look at the prostituted and virginal entities. And here, I think they're talking about the approach one takes to finding the treasures in the unconscious mind, or maybe looking at that book of life in the high priestess's lap. You can either take it by force or you can take it by asking with love and humility. You can rape and plunder, or you can take with gentleness and care. And I think they're saying if you take the attitude of raping and plundering, then what you get is going to be a prostituted thing that comes to you in return. Whereas if you approach these things with love and gentleness and humility, the treasures can be great. Any thoughts on that, Guillermo, or anything else here?
So just to sum up, they seem this passage suggests that if you polarize negatively in the sense of the transformation, you make the left-hand path decision and you go there, then you're going for a rough and prostituted version without great virtue of the potentiator of consciousness. You got to explore that part of the sea, right? And um, yeah, you would think that there is a sort of judgment comment or value inferred by rather, but now that I'm reading it again, it doesn't seem to be judgmental. It just seems to be what it is. It's without great virtue. It's what it is. It's you become sharp. You become like as an arrow. You protect yourself and you attack and you go. And on the other, but they reflect, but at the same time, then there's a sort of a judgment value when they talk about the right hand path. They say it's of great value. It's a really beautiful courtship, and they talk from experience, right? And they are the one giving the channeling, so they have the right to share their experience and say it's a very nice one. It's once you do it, once you make it, it's hard. It's not like as fast or as quick as the other one. You're not gonna get it that easy, but if you come, with sincerity, with love, and you stay in this direction and you're true to it, no matter the hardships, then you will gain something of great value. And they speak from experience. I think it's a very it's rare in the channelings to see them putting so much of their own experience into of their own personal touch into something, but I feel it's somewhat poetic.
For sure. And I don't see it as making judgments so much as making discernments. I don't think they're making judgments that either of these ways are any better than the service to self path being any less worthy than the service to others path. Both are worthy. I think they're just making discernments about the differences between the two. And I think that is probably, again, something to consider since one is transformed by the choices that they make. So you can choose to, in looking at a woman, you can choose to rape her or you could choose to romance her. And they're saying they obviously have a bias for the latter rather than the former, just because our friends in Confederation have said they're already biased towards the service to others path, so they're always going to lean that way. And I believe they said that this logos has a bias towards kindness. So in a way, there is a built-in bias there, but I don't think they're necessarily making moral judgments about good and bad or good and evil. I know that's my thought on it. Andy, did you have any thoughts, reflections on what Guillermo said, or anything else here?
Yeah, I love it, and it's great. Thanks, Guillermo. I think, like for me, it's the same woman, like, and what she becomes depends on how we treat her. So, for instance, like yeah, if we use, and I've been guilty of it, using my mind as a weapon, against other minds, but then I have also delved into it, not as something to be used, but something to explore and go, oh, okay, that's interesting. Let's see where this takes us, like thought experiments and contemplations. But what I really love is that last passage about the genie, because it's like we often feel attacked when we're in conversation with people who rub us the wrong way, or even sometimes friends or whoever, and there's the temptation to attack back, like in the form of that genie in this metaphor. But also, if we can sort of see those so-called attacks as gifts that reveal to us what we're hiding from ourselves, it can be incredibly useful. Because if someone says something to us about us that we don't like, let's say someone says to me, oh, your service to self, and you're so hideous, and I might react at an instant and go, oh, how dare she say that to me? But then if I don't react that way and I go, oh, or I react and then I look at that reaction and then say, oh, that's interesting. Which aspect of me is reacting to that? And thank you for this person for showing me that there's still an aspect of me that reacts, because that's obviously something I've been trying to hide from myself. And when you have nothing left to hide, one becomes so vulnerable that we become invulnerable. So it's like becoming fire or water or air. A sword can pierce us, but it can just go right through us. There's nothing solid for it to pierce.
Nice. Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. Neely, anything to add to that?
Yeah, very interesting. I think you all brought up such interesting points in the discussion with regards to the prostituted entity. I want to add like another layer or nuance that kind of came to me is the immediacy of getting what you need from the prostituted entity, as opposed to the protracted courting of the positive, what is perceived to be the positive path. And it kind of connected me to everything we had said before about the world giving us catalysts that seem more towards the negative. So you will immediately, just like what Andy said, you will immediately see the negative. But in order to really go and do the positive work, it takes time. You need to sit with yourself, not react immediately in the positive way, but take your time. And that is why the positive way or the positive polarity, you need to court it and you need to really sit with it rather than just shoot from the hip, you know?
Indeed. Yeah, it reminds me a lot of our approach to Mother Earth, Mother Gaia, and the resources she has to offer. It is clear that there are many who prefer to just take what they want by force without really any care for the planet itself. And there are others who care for more wooing it and courting it and taking what they wish and asking for permission. I'm reminded there are many indigenous cultures where it was a teaching and a practice that before you would take some plant medicine or something, you would ask the plant for permission to take it and to help others. And yeah, obviously, I think we can see the consequences of the plundering of the planet that we've seen up to this point, and only hope that those indigo children and other wanderers coming in years to come can help us learn to live more in balance and harmony with our beloved Mother Earth. We've been going for over 2 hours already, and I think we've got 2 more archetypes to go through. Does anybody have any thoughts, anything to add on this one before we look at the last archetype? I mean, last of the archetypes of the mind. Let's take a look at Great Way of the Mind, also known as the Chariot or Arcanum number 7. In session 79, question 41, Ra referred to this as a reflection and substantial summary of archetypes 1 through 6, showing the kingdom or fruits of appropriate travel through the mind, and that the mind continues to move as majestically through the material it conceives of as a chariot drawn by a royal lion or steeds. And in session 103, question 11, one of the last sessions, in referring to that interesting line pattern on the chest of the figure in the center, Ra said the use of the Tao and the architect's square is indeed intended to suggest the proximity of the space-time of the Great Way's environment to time-space. The entire mood of the Great Way is indeed dependent upon its notable difference from the significator. The significator is the significant self to a great extent, but not entirely influenced by the lowering of the veil. The Great Way of the mind, the body, or the spirit draws the environment which has been a new architecture caused by the veiling process and thusly dipped in the great limitless current of time-space. Really fascinating one, and this is probably one I understand the least out of all the ones that we've seen before. I would love to hear Neely's thoughts on that second part, because I think she was talking about time-space earlier. When Ross says it's indeed intended to suggest the proximity of the space-time of the Great Way's environment to time-space. What's your take on that, Neely? How do you interpret that?
Well, that's another very interesting archetype, because it kind of shows you the accumulation of everything, all of the archetypes before it, and you kind of move on to on the great way of the mind. But this is not something that happens once in your lifetime, right? You don't go through all of those archetypes and you reach the great way and you know where you're heading. This is something that's happening again and again and again, like micro initiations throughout your life. And that's the closeness to it being time-space rather than space-time, because it's happening throughout your life, but it's also happening all at the same time. And you're experiencing, I would say, millions of catalysts throughout your day. And you respond to each of them, and you go through all of those archetypes for each and every one of those catalysts, whether you're aware of it or not aware of it. And I see the great way of the mind as, yes, it's a summary, but it's also happening again and again and again.
Interesting. Yeah, my take on this is what's happening every single moment of waking consciousness. They're describing the processes that your conscious and subconscious mind are constantly doing every moment that you are taking in catalyst or sense data from your environment, which, yeah, super fascinating. Guillermo, any thoughts on what Neely said or anything here?
I think it's really interesting, the time space and the space time connotations that we're discussing. They seem to suggest that the key difference is in between they say the mood the mood of the great way is dependent on this difference with the significator. So they seem to say, like, yeah, the significator is cool, but it's totally not unveiled. It's like it's what happens when the courtship has begun and blah 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 blah, and then it's like a specific, like Neely says, like a specific point in the process. However, the great way like incorporates the veiling and the unveiling, and it's like a cycle that happens again and again and again. But I'm very puzzled by the last sentence that you read, Jonathan. Is draws the environment, which has been the new architecture, okay, caused by the veiling process, the whole cycle. And but that then dipped in the great limitless current of time space. I mean, how do we make sense of that? How the you would think that having no veil at all, like the significator, dips you completely into time space. But then here they suggest, well, is the fact that the veil comes down and then comes up and down and up endlessly, that puts you in the current of time space. So I think it's very mysterious. It's sad that they didn't get to go too deep in that, but
Yeah.
maybe, yeah.
Yeah, there were 106 sessions altogether, so this was the third to last session. Andy?
I was just going to talk about that because I forgot to talk about my cake analogy. in the transformation card. So I'll quickly just say, because it's relevant. So the transformation is like the cake being, it's been eaten and it's transformed from cake to like food, and then like processed through the body, and it's transformed into poop, and then flushed down the toilet. And for me, the great way is the whole journey from the conception in the mind, in the matrix as an idea, and the entire journey from the matrix all the way to the transformation. And the great way encompasses all that. And for me, the three great way cards represent service to the one infinite creator, in terms of letting service, in terms of letting the one infinite creator experience itself. So for instance, the great way of the mind is a vehicle, the chariot, and the great way of the body is the alchemist, which is like pouring liquid, and then there's a vessel. So it's like a channel or a vessel for the infinite creator, for spirit. And then the great way of the spirit is the universe, which in which you see an instrument being played. So we then become the instrument for the creator. So it's all about becoming the vehicle, the channel, an instrument, in order for the creator to experience itself. And hence comes the current, because there's this creator's desire to know itself and to throw us out into space-time, and then us going back into time-space. And there's this kind of movement so that the creator is discovering itself. I don't know, does that make sense?
Fascinating. There's a lot to unpack there, and I'm not necessarily sure if I understood everything. Neely, did you have any thoughts, reflections on what Andy said?
Still processing. I'll pass for now.
Yeah. Did you have any thoughts on anything else in this passage?
Well, about what Indy just said, I got it. I can't explain it, but I got it. It's very interesting. It's like it's like that there's a certain way that the current wants to go, right? And then there's many options, and we like it to go a certain way, we like to evolve, we like to, but the current also likes to go the other way. It likes to make us a little dumber, a little like whatever, like a little more deficient, and then to brings us back up and back down. And once we just get out of ourselves and just flow, then you feel the current, right? Then you're closer to time space.
Nice. Yeah, I know it's been said many times, Quo has said many times, that we are at the intersection of time, space, and space-time. And in many ways, that's what that cross symbol represents as well, that intersection between the two. And so I suppose insofar as this represents the summation of everything from archetypes 1 through 6, from the conscious mind dipping into the ocean of the unconscious mind and bringing back what it can to interpret catalysts and experiences and how we are transformed by them and moving forward from this point, and that's happening every moment that we are conscious. Yeah, I think that makes sense, and probably a good transition into our final archetype. Why don't we take a look at the choice, also known as the Fool, or Arcanum number 22. As mentioned at the beginning, there are 7 archetypes of the mind, 7 archetypes of the body, 7 archetypes of the spirit, for a total of 21 archetypes. The choice is the 22nd one, which is not really part of any one of those series of archetypes specifically, but kind of part of all of them, which is why we're going to look at it here. In session 67, question 30, Ra said, each seeker will experience each archetype and the characteristics within the complex of the archetype, which are most important to it. An example of this would be the observation of the questioner that the fool is described in such and such a way. One great aspect of this archetype is the aspect of faith, the walking into space without regard for what is to come next. This is, of course, foolish, but is part of the characteristic of the spiritual neophyte. In session 87, question 16, Ra said, the one great breakthrough which was made after our work in third density the one great breakthrough which was made after our work in third density was done was the proper emphasis given to Arcanum number 22, which we have called the choice. In our own experience, we were aware that such a unifying archetype existed, but did not give that archetype the proper complex of concepts in order to most efficaciously use that archetype in order to promote our evolution. A few questions later in that session 24, Ra said, when at length the student had mastered these visualizations and had considered each of the 7 classifications of archetype, looking at the relationships between mind, body, and spirit, we then suggested consideration of archetypes in pairs, 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5, 6 and 7. You may continue in this form for the body and spirit archetypes. You will note that the consideration of the significator was left unpaired, for the significator shall be paired with archetype 22. This was in response to a question Don had asked about how those of Ra had taught the archetypical mind to those in Egypt who they attempted to share these with. And they were suggesting that there are different ways of looking at the archetypes in smaller groupings. So here they were indeed talking about looking at them in pairs, looking at the matrix of the mind, potentiator of the mind together as a pair, looking at the catalyst of the mind and the experience of the mind together as a pair, how they interact. And then they said they would pair the significator of the mind with the choice to see how they go together. And then lastly, the transformation of the mind paired with the great way of the mind. Any thoughts on anything in this set of passages, Andy?
Yeah, this is a card I've been meditating on recently, and I have to say, like everything I say, like nobody just believe everything I say or anything I say. Like just go within, see if it's true for you. Because I don't even believe everything I say, and I'm the one saying it. So, and what I say will be dependent on what I'm going through at the time. And for me, at this point, I've worked with this card several times, but this time round, it's about returning to the ocean of consciousness, because the fool is walking into the unknown, into water, and of particular significance to me at this point is the crocodile, and for me that represents an aspect of the self that I need to reconcile and integrate, and the structure that's fallen is like the structures of third density that are kind of no longer relevant. I love that he's blindfolded, because it's not only unknown, it's unknowable. So yeah.
Indeed. It's a great start, absolutely. Neely, any thoughts, reflections to add to what Andy said?
Yeah, first, I just love, Andy, what you said about third density structures falling apart or breaking down. I definitely feel it resonated with me. And just looking at the state of the world right now, there are so many things that are no longer working. However, we are blindfolded and we cannot and do not know what is going to come up next. And that brings me to the concept of faith, essentially. So to me, the choice card, or the fool in other sets of cards, is kind of like representing the point in the hero's journey where the hero needs to make a decision. That's the choice. You need to decide how you continue forward. And you need to decide it during chaos with your eyes being blindfolded, and there may or may not be a crocodile ahead of you. You don't know. You don't really know. So this is where faith comes in and says, I know it's hard and I don't know what's going to happen, but I believe that all is well and I believe that I will make the right choice. So this was kind of like my gut reaction to the card. And then I wanted to talk about the connection with the Significator, which is another favorite card of mine. I see the connection with the Significator with the baggage that the figure carries. It carries like two bags full of its own biases and experiences and everything that made it whatever it is right now. And that is all he has to rely on while making that choice, that and his faith.
That's fascinating. Yeah, I really wasn't even paying that much attention to the bags there, but what you said makes sense. And I wasn't even thinking of that thing on the bottom as being a structure that has fallen over. I really wasn't sure what to make out of that, but what you've said makes sense. Guillermo, anything to add?
Well, it's a very curious, right? Because even Russ said like we don't really know we don't re didn't really knew where to put it or what emphasis to give it upon in our third density. It's sort of like in the pack of cards, the Joker. When you put a Joker, well, it's sort of like this. It's say you're in a situation and it's very tight, and you have to make a you have to you have to face some consequence or whatever, and uh, and then you have a joker, and you use it, and you get out. Yeah, you go on. It's supposed to be like the end of the road, and then whoop, you get a. I don't know. I feel like. Sometimes life puts us in a really tough spot and we don't really know where to go. And then like you all just mentioned like these aspects of faith, of the unknowable, of like immediate danger, and but you just take the leap and see if that works out. Right. We all need to do that at some point or another.
Yeah, for sure. And I would say this is all a good reminder that third density is referred to as the density of choice, because that is such a central point to it. It is what one could say, arguably, is the meaning of life in third density, is to make a choice between what is referred to as the positive path and the negative path, the path of service to others and service to self. And we have seen that choice reflected so much in so many of the other archetypes that we've seen so far, the polarities and transformation and the choice between the two, the prostituted entity or the maiden one. But I suppose the thing that stands out most in this one is the part about faith, which I don't think is necessarily seen so much in the other archetypes. The idea that you have to make this choice blindfolded, you really don't know, and you have to be willing to take risks. Walking over a cliff without having anything beneath you, or walking into the world filled with alligators or crocodiles and trusting that all will be well. That does seem to be a very central theme in third density that apparently Ra overlooked in their time on Venus. I think I had one more passages to look at on this archetype. Anybody have anything else to say on this screen before I change it? Let's see. This is from September 25th, 1994, and it has been edited for brevity. Quo said, "We have been speaking this day of the choice that is represented by the 22nd archetype, known as the Fool. The entire process of seeking within your third density illusion is one in which you become that fool. It is a process which contains the, as your Bible has called it, the valley of the shadow of death. There is in this process a rod and a staff which comforts those who walk through the valley of the shadow of death. These are the will and the faith components that ring throughout each archetypical image and are as the guiding star. For the faith that this process will end well must be fueled by the will to persevere. Thus, there is the threat of the falling to one's death, the being eaten alive by the illusion, the inability to see the danger about one, for it is all about one in darkness, it would seem. Thus, the image of the fool is well suited to your illusion and is given as that motto by which each might look for inspiration and illumination of the heart. We speak of the heart, for there the love of the Creator may be found and experienced for the self and for all other selves, as the self which is the seeker, which continues to place itself in positions similar to the walking from the cliff, willing to be vulnerable and to give without expectation of return. This archetype is the most active archetype, shall we say. Though it is the last to be mastered, it is the first to be called, and the one to be called most often, my friends. Really beautiful, and I really love all the imagery that's used here, the walking off the cliff, the being eaten alive by the illusion, which is how I was seeing the alligator, the dangers there. The inability to see the danger about one, and yet still believing on blind faith without having any evidence really to back it up that all is well and that all will be well. That really does seem to be kind of a nice way to summarize our 3D reality illusion, whatever you want to call it. You have any thoughts on anything here, Neely?
Yeah, this is exactly it. It embodies the faith with which you go into the world, making yourself vulnerable. This is something that I've been thinking a lot about, because it's really easy to go into the world having your armor, being cynical, prickly, not letting anything or anybody come close to you, like in the previous archetypes. But in this one, this is it. You know yourself, you went through the whole journey, you understand what your choice is. Are you going to appear in the world as your true self, or hide behind something, or not be it? And there's a lot of courage in doing just that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Guillermo, anything to add?
I'm very intrigued by this specific card. I think I'll never cease to be intrigued by it, especially the contrast between the. Well, first of all, Jonathan, it was very beautiful what you just read. Uh, I'm touched just by hearing it. But it makes me think, the moon and the sun, like they seem to be eclipsing, but either eclipsing in or either eclipsing out. This is the first card. This is the last card. Is it truly the last to master? Is it truly the first to call? I mean, it almost seems like outside of polarity somewhat. I feel like it's sort of like encompassing both polarities at the same time. I couldn't really say, yeah, because he's dressed in stripes, right? He has like white stripes, darker stripes, and stuff. He just seems to be like either a whole mess or like a whole perfection. I don't know.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Beautiful way to put it. And yeah, I don't think Dawn ever asked about the moon, sun, light, dark figures in the sky that are there, but I think he spoke well to it. It does seem to be part of polarity that seems to be so central to all the other archetypes. And I believe it was said that, yeah, third density, polarity is like a third density thing. You don't really see so much about polarity in fourth, fifth, and sixth density, because that's more about unity, and that's seeing unity in everything and oneness in everything. Anything to add on this, Andy?
Yeah, so much. I forgot. I mean, this is until Guillermo talked about the Joker, I'd forgot like my previous workings with the card. But it is one I feel I resonate with the most. And like because like if you think about court jesters, right, they have the most dangerous job in the kingdom. You know, they had to diffuse 10 situations for the emperor or the king, and you know, and yet like by joking, by playing the fool, and historically there's been like jokers or court jesters that have like saved entire populations by convincing the king not to wage war, you know, and and yet they're not doing it out of a kind of heroic attempt, but rather, you know, this, I don't know, just like it's just part of their beingness. And what resonates with me is the trickster archetype as well. So my favorite TV series, my favorite story is Loki, the film, and it's not the film, this TV series, and I've watched it 6 times. I've just started watching it again, and the trickster likes to challenge and, you know, cause chaos and pull down structures, and I revel in that as well, you know, and yeah, I love it. And it is the last to be mastered, I think, because it's, although it's my favorite card and I've, you know, worked really hard with it, meditated and, you know, read and everything, there's just so many layers to it that I still don't understand.
Yeah, indeed. And it's a reminder to me that the Heyokas were the sacred clowns of the Plains Indians tribes and served much of those functions in teaching and helping others, oftentimes by doing the opposite of what was supposed to be done. Beautiful thoughts, beautiful discussion. I think I'm about ready to wind things down here. Does anybody have any last thoughts, reflections on this particular archetype or anything on this screen before I change? Sounds good. So where do we go from here? What are some takeaway lessons that we might have to remember from this last 2.5-hour discussion? Got a few of them. I think I've got 6 of them. If you don't remember anything else, if you can remember that the archetypical mind could be thought of as the blueprint or the programming of our 3D experience. It's kind of like the software for a video game. If you can think of third density existence as like a video game, which in many ways it is, it's kind of like the programming for it. If you can remember that archetypes of the mind, as far as I can tell, are how your conscious and unconscious minds process, catalyst, and experience. That seems to be a good way to think about it. If you can remember that polarity and choice are really wired into our third density reality or illusion, however you think of it. If you can remember that our 3D reality is designed to seem negative, and it's not, you're not imagining it. It's designed to look fucked up. The world is designed to look fucked up. That's hilarious. Fucked up by design is going to be probably another podcast episode one of these days. And if you can remember what they said about how negative experiences often result in polarization towards the positive, and that positive experiences often result in polarizing ones towards service to self, then that might be a helpful way to look at what seem to be the abundance of negative experiences we're going through. And if you can remember that we are transformed by our choices, indeed, that would be a great thing to remember every day from here on out. Guillermo, any takeaway lessons of your own you'd like to add? Any final thoughts, reflections on this subject?
No, the only phrase that comes to mind is to know is not to know.
Nice. I have no idea what that means. Care to elaborate?
I have no idea what I just said.
Good.
Sounds
If you were
good.
watching this on video, that's for you to figure out. That's your own little Zen koan there from Master Guillermo. Andy, anything to add? Any final thoughts, reflections, takeaway lessons?
No, I feel like I've barely scratched the surface. I've been meditating on them and working with them, contemplating them for what, 6 years now? Still haven't got a clue.
Yeah, indeed. Same. Neely, anything to add?
Exactly the same sentiments. We're all bozos on the bus, as Carla liked to say. Um, I like the archetypes because they can give me signposts on how to maybe decipher this 3D experience, but I think learning them is a lifelong thing. It's not, to me at least, I don't think I'm ever gonna get to, oh, I get it.
Over multiple incarnations, no doubt. Yeah, and it probably should be noted that Ra and or Quo have said that nobody needs to understand the archetypical mind in order to graduate from third density to fourth density. There's nothing here you really need to know. But they have said it's a great way to accelerate your spiritual evolution if that's something you're seeking to do. Again, it's like the programming for the video game. You can enjoy a video game without understanding how the software or programming works behind it. But if you do understand the software, the programming on it, that could help you do better in the game, can give you some cheat codes maybe to help you get farther or faster in the game. And if that's what you're trying to do here on Earth, then archetypical mind would be a great way to go. Otherwise, panelists, it is that time, and it is, of course, time for your pop quiz. Pop quiz is something we like to do on these episodes just to kind of end our time together on a fun note and maybe look for Law of One lessons in pop culture. So panelists, you clearly know a bit about the great way of the mind, but how much do you know about one of the greatest minds of modern time? Probably the best known physicist of our time other than Albert Einstein. His book, A Brief History of Time, appeared on the Sunday Times bestseller list for a record-breaking 237 weeks. He was director of research at the Center for Theoretical Cosmology at the University of Cambridge. Between 1979 and 2009, he was the Lucasian Professor of Mathematics at Cambridge, widely viewed as one of the most prestigious academic posts in the world. Isaac Newton was the second person to hold that post. He was a Fellow of the Royal Society, a lifetime member of the Pontifical Academy of Sciences, and a recipient of the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian award in the United States. As if that wasn't enough, this entity has also been a pop culture phenomenon, appearing as himself in such pop culture staples as The Simpsons, Star Trek, and The Big Bang Theory. Always, of course, in a wheelchair, always communicating via computer speech, because that's apparently the physical challenges he chose pre-incarnatedly to have. I'm, of course, referring to who, panelists?
Stephen Hawking.
Stephen Hawking, indeed. You guys know much about this entity? Have you read any of his books or anything about him?
I've read A Brief History of Time twice.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's so cool.
You will have to explain it to me. I have not read it yet. I really don't know much about this person other than what I learned from writing this pop quiz. But I'm going to ask you 4 questions about this very special third density entity. See how many you can answer correctly. Panelists, go ahead, say your answers out loud. If you're watching this on video sometime in the future, near or distant, go ahead, say your answers out loud. We can hear you through time-space. As always, the points don't matter. If you had fun, you won. If you learned something new about this fascinating, brave entity, you won as well. Panelists, are you ready for your first question? Your first question. Hawking was born on the anniversary of whose death? Was it A, Galileo, B, Isaac Newton, or C, Leonardo da Vinci?
I'm going to guess A. I've got no idea.
A is a good guess.
I'm gonna guess C for variety.
C is a good guess. Guillermo?
I'd say it has to be B.
Nice. You are covering your bases, panelists. You must have played this game before. The correct answer is, in fact, A. Hawking was born on January 8th, 1942, which just happened to be the 300th anniversary of Galileo's death.
Wow.
Love those synchronicities. How about your second question? Hawking discovered that black holes do what? A, emit radiation, B, shrink and disappear completely, or C, have quantum effects near their event horizon?
I will go with A.
A is a good guess.
Um, I'll go with C.
C is good guess.
I see
Guillermo,
it's a
are you going to go
trick
for B
question.
again?
It's a trick question. It's all three.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you just saying that, or do you know that?
Guillermo says.
I'm pretty
Oh,
positive.
I don't know. Yeah, no.
You are correct, Guillermo. The correct
Oh,
answer
cool.
is indeed all of the above, and you haven't even done pop quizzes before. Yeah, any answers are fair game on these. Could be all the above, none of the above, any combination of the above, or anything else, really. But yeah, Stephen
Guillermo,
Hawking's most significant discovery regarding black holes is the concept of what we now know as Hawking radiation. He theorized that black holes, contrary to previous understanding, are not entirely black and can emit radiation due to quantum effects near the event horizon. This radiation, now known as Hawking radiation, implies that black holes can shrink and eventually evaporate over extremely long timescales. Don't ask me to explain any of that because I'm really not sure. I'm just reading what I copied and pasted from elsewhere, which is how I got through high school physics, I think. Yeah. Did somebody have thoughts, comments on this?
Well,
well, Guillermo has an advantage because he's a mathematician.
Oh, nice, nice. So did you know that all of those were true, Guillermo, or were you just guessing?
yeah, I don't know the physics behind. Physics is really hard and really long journey, but he should have gotten a Nobel Prize with Roger Penrose in 2022, but he died a couple months before. Very strange.
Oh,
Uh, yeah, so this realization motivated Roger Penrose to say to posit the cyclic universe, because he says if what Hawking has proved is true, then everything will be swallowed by a larger black hole, and then the whole existence will just disappear, and then there's nothing for eternity. He said, well, there has to be like a cycles, like an ending and a beginning, and he has like this cyclical universe just emerging from stuff.
which kind of reminds us what Ra had told Dawn about all the octaves concluding in a black hole and then starting again on the other side.
Yeah.
Sounds very much like that. Yeah. Yeah, well said. Beautifully done. And thank you for shining some light on that, Guillermo. Most appreciate it. Are you ready for your next question? Here's your next question. True or false? Hawking talked about the possibility of extraterrestrial civilizations like the Orion Empire.
I will go with true.
Yeah, I'll go with true as well.
Yeah, true.
It'd be a really weird question to write otherwise, yeah. Yeah, indeed, it is true. He did say that given the vastness of the universe, there very could well be primitive life out there, if possible, other intelligent life. He said primitive life is very common and intelligent life is very rare, adding that some would say it has yet to occur on Earth. He did also do an episode on the possibility of aliens and his Into the Universe with Stephen Hawking series on the Discovery Channel. And in one of those episodes, he did suggest that aliens might use up their own planet's resources and, in his own words, become nomads looking to conquer and colonize whatever planets they could reach, which sounds a lot like a Orion Empire to me. Super fascinating. Last question, most important. How many times did Hawking appear on The Simpsons? Was it A, 2, B, 3, or C, 4?
I'll go with C.
Yeah, I'm going with C as well.
Same. 4 times.
Nice. You guys have crushed it. Yes, indeed, 4 times as himself. He was a fan of the show and agreed to participate because he thought it would be fun and he enjoyed watching The Simpsons, so he was on it 4 times. Beautiful show. The Simpsons, of course, debuted in 1989. They've had 790 episodes of the show broadcast. It is the longest running American animated series, the longest running American sitcom, and the longest running American scripted primetime television series, both in terms of seasons and individual episodes. Hilarious stuff. Well, panelists, want to thank you for being here. It has been a joy, as always. Thank you for all you've done and continue to do in service to others. To all our friends at L&L Research, thank you for all you've done and continue to do in service to others. For you who are watching this on video at some time in the near or distant future, thank you for all you've done and continue to do in service to others. We are sending you our love light, and we are receiving yours. Until next time, Adonai, Namaste. Say goodbye, panelists.
Bye.
Much love.